getting out of the way.
Okay, so raise your hand if you've ever been to Alaska. Okay, quite a few people, but quite a few people have not gone. So I personally have gone twice. So we're going to have this nice Alaskan adventure to introduce you to Alaska, Anchorage, taking the train to Denali, glaciers, flying. I didn't do flying. Flying, that would be really cool. To catch can, and a boat on the inner passage. So you got glaciers, you got grizzlies, you got mountains. Let's give a warm welcome to Carol McCririe.
Right. Thank you. So I got interested in Alaska a lot of years ago. If you've never read Sue Henry, this book, Death Takes Passage, she wrote, it was a tribute voyage reenacting the first transit of the gold from the gold fields into the city. And this was a reenactment, and it was on a small boat that only had 100 people. And I was like, ooh, small boat, that sounds really cool. So 5 years ago, I went on the David B., which you'll see in here. It's got 4 staterooms and 3 people that run it. So this last trip I took, I had 8 people. And the first time I went, I think there were 6 of us. So, but there were a lot of things I couldn't do when I was there the last time. And I went back so that I could do all the stuff I didn't get to do the first time. So I started out, I flew into Anchorage. And ironically, the night before the trip, I was having a beer with a friend, looking online for something to do so I could see as much of Anchorage as possible. And I actually found a company called Pick Tours Alaska. And they take you on a full day trip down the Turnagain Arm, and you get to see so much stuff, and they show you how to take really good pictures with your phone. This is my first view from my hotel room when I got to Anchorage. So this is the Turnagain Arm. So I got to figure out how to use this. Way up here is Anchorage, and this road that runs down is the Seward Highway, and it ends at the Anson-Anderson Memorial Tunnel, which takes you into Whittier. We did not go through the tunnel, but we drove the whole road down. Great views. On the right, it was low tide, so a lot of mud flats, but there are places where it's 4 miles wide, and you get so many great views. And on the left is I can't pronounce this, Chugach State Park, 3,000-foot mountains. So we did all of this and just saw all kinds of cool things. The railroad also runs right down there. This is still Turnagain Arm, but this is farther out from Anchorage, so more water. We made a stop, and there was a nesting eagle, so that was kind of cool to be able to see that right off the side of the road. And I will say, eagles are everywhere in Alaska. The first time I went in Juneau, driving down the 2-sided highway, 2 lanes on each side, and every light pole had an eagle sitting on top of it. This is an area they call the Circle of Glaciers or Ring of Glaciers. And they're everywhere, and it's all along the water. We learned how to take all these cool panoramic, bizarre looking photos, and it was very fun. So part of the trip was supposed to be a cruise on Portage Lake, across Portage Lake to the base of Portage Glacier. However, as you can see, very late spring, so the cruise part of the trip got canceled. But we got to stand there and freeze our butts off. And another thing I learned, if you have somebody else taking the picture and you start here and they do a panoramic shot and you go behind them, this is the result. So you end up on both sides of the picture. So not only do you have one crazy picture of yourself freezing, you have two. So our next stop was at a place called the Alaskan Wildlife Conservation Center. And this is from their website, so I didn't write this. A sanctuary dedicated to preserving Alaska's wildlife through conservation, education, and research. They take in injured and orphaned animals and provide them with spacious enclosures and quality animal care. Most become permanent residents, but they do try to reintroduce them back into the wild if they can. Current residents include porcupines, bison, wolves, reindeer, muskox, lynx, owls, foxes, bears, elk, coyotes, deer, and moose. And I see if this works, Jeff. This is Yuli. Yuli's mother was killed when he was a cub, and he will live there forever because he would never learn how to survive in the wild. And if you look close, he loves this ball, and you can hear people laughing in the background. You can also tell it was very windy and rainy that day. This is Hugo. I don't know why her name is Hugo. She's a female grizzly, and she was absolutely fascinating to watch. I will tell you, I probably have 50 pictures of her because she chewed on this log forever. She was ripping it out in shreds with her claws, pulling it out with her teeth, just not to eat it, but just to mess with it. They have gray wolves. This is Bree and Deshka. They came in 2015 and 16 from a facility in Montana it's a zoological facility, but not a zoo. And they came here, quote unquote, to become ambassadors for their species. The female's the one on the left. I tell everybody that the males wore her out. But they have huge enclosures. I mean, they have so much space, all of these animals. The porcupines are all named after candy bars. Baby Ruth, Heath, and Twix. And this is actually Twix. They have an entire herd of black-tailed deer. And I took tons of pictures of those too. But it was hard to pick pictures for this. I took 1,200 pictures on this trip. So trying to find pictures to tone this down. The wood bison with the calf on the right, very early birth because they're only red for the first few weeks. So I thought it was a wolf in there at first, and it's not. It's actually a calf. And the moose, of course. You guys know what a moose looks like. So this bear, his name is Kuma, and you can see how big their enclosures are. I mean, they have a lot of space to roam. Kuma likes being in the trees. He was actually rescued. He was 3 pounds. Somebody was digging a septic field, and the mother bear and the cub walked through, and the bear fell in the hole and couldn't get out, the cub, and the mother just left him there. So they rescued him at 3 pounds, and he's lived there ever since. So next stop, I left Anchorage on the Alaska Railroad. I wanted to go to Denali. I didn't want to have to drive, and I didn't really want to have to fly because I was already flying all over the place. So the Alaskan Railroad from Anchorage to Denali, 7 hours, but it doesn't seem like it. I paid a little extra for Gold Star service, which put you in these domed covers. And it included breakfast and lunch on the way there and lunch and dinner on the way back. Saw lots of great things. Stopped in Telkina. There are all these little settlements just on the side of the railroad. I mean, that little blue building is City Hall. And the depot, I'm like, that's interesting. So there were a lot of little things like this along the way that were very cool to see. This is one of the most photographed places on the Alaskan Railroad. It is, I believe, the Hurricane Turn. It is a huge railroad trellis that goes over the ravine. And he actually slows down so that you can go out in the open part of the train and take pictures. And they'd slow down in both directions. These are just more views along the way. So welcome to Denali. So fortunate enough that even though it was late spring and there was still snow, the light was still good. So even though my train got in at like 3 in the afternoon, it was still light till like 10. So I still had a half a day to explore. So I went to the visitor center the first day. I kind of drove around. Normally in season, you can go to mile marker 15, which is the Savage River, but the tour buses weren't starting for like another week. And so I could have driven to mile 83 if I wanted. I ended up I only went as far as here the first day just to kind of check it out and go to the visitor center. This is actually the Savage River. But the views were just amazing, and I was surprised at how much snow there still was. On day 2, I actually went as far as mile marker 30. I could have gone farther, but they were doing a wildlife count. I think they were counting wolves. And there's a rest stop at like mile 30, and then I hiked all the way up to this bridge, which is the Teklanika River. Elevation's 2650. The area is frequented by grizzlies, but I was not privileged enough to be able to see one of them. But it was a nice view, even though it was still a lot frozen. And these are just more views. This is actually the Sanctuary River. This is at elevation 2468. Like I said, just more beautiful scenery. This is me just driving along the road trying to get some good shots. And it was the only day that it was really sunny. I think it started to rain towards the end of the day. I did get to see the wildlife kennels, and they did a demo.
Good job, come on, guys.
Except for the bald head that stood in front of my camera. And then I got to visit the kennels, and they must have easily 75 or 80 dogs. And if you look back here, these fenced areas are for the dogs that can't behave in their own little houses and dig holes and stuff, because those enclosures in the back are mesh with a concrete floor so that they can't tear their way out. And I probably took another 20 or 30 pictures of dogs. So, like I said, trying to pick the cutest one. I did like Munchkin. That was a very cute dog. This is where I stayed. This was called the Dome Home. And the cool thing about this bed and breakfast is they have their own rental cars. They picked me up at the train station, fixed me up with a 4-wheel drive vehicle, and I got breakfast every day. So it made it worthwhile. This is the 49th State Brewing Company. And I stopped there one night and had dinner. And the biggest reason I stopped there was because that is the bus that they used in the filming of Into the Wild. It's not the actual bus, but it's the one they used in the movie. And it would have been nice to sit outdoors, but it was about 30 degrees. So this was my last day. This is the Mountain Vista Trail, and it was actually a nice day too. I think it was finally starting to warm up because there were places on the trail where it was really muddy. And I was like, well, got to do it. And it was just, this is me trying to get Denali again. And it is buried back there in the clouds. Even though it's a beautiful sunny day, it's just really hard to get a good view of it. I actually got a pretty good view on my way back on the train. They actually showed a view of it going from the other direction. So I got on a plane and took a plane to Ketchikan, which is where the cruise started. And Ketchikan is this huge mishmash of things. The airport's on an island. Ketchikan's actually on an island, but the airport's on a different island. You get there and you discover that you have to pay for a ferry. Either that or I did horrible research because I didn't know I was going to have to pay for a ferry to go to the mainland. But you get to the port, and the port is all cruise ships, tour boats, fishing boats, a multitude of things. And then you get a few blocks away and you have tourist shops, restaurants, gift shops. And then you go a little bit farther and you have what's called Creek Street. And Creek Street are all these buildings built on stilts and all these little bridges. And like even this little thing here on the side, you can walk out on that if you're so inclined to try and take a picture. I probably took 20 pictures of this raging stream just from different angles. But you're actually in the middle of the Tongass National Forest. And they have parks and flowers. And like I said, it's just like, as soon as you get away from the shoreline, a lot of Indian influence. This is that center totem is actually at the Totem Heritage Center. I didn't go inside, but they had like 10 totems outside. So of course I have pictures of all those too. But in the actual fishing area, they have all these engravings of these little, these are huge. You can see the buildings behind them and the cruise ship behind them. But like I said, there's totem poles everywhere. Okay, so now at noon on day 6 of my adventure, I boarded the David B. It's a small boat. It was built in 1929, purchased in 1998 by Jeffrey and Christine Smith. The boat has been repurposed. It took them 8 years. They thought it would take them 2. And if you ever really want to read the story of it, there's a good book out there that they wrote about their restoration of this boat. It was an old tugboat. And they spent 8 years getting it ready to go out and take people out on cruises. And they've done a ton of projects and updates. They've moved the bridge and moved some other stuff around. I mean, even from 5 years ago, they've made a lot of changes to it. So this is the crew. So you got Captain Jeffrey. He navigates the boat and encourages guests to visit him on the bridge. And you have to fight for a seat to sit on the bridge. There's only 3 seats. So we rotate people in and out to sit up there and watch him. He's got this, it's not like the old days where you're navigating a boat with a wheel. He's got a computer that shows him all the little traps in the water and shows him other boats that are coming near and what the name of the boat is. And it's on some kind of navigational cooperative where they register. So he knows the name of all the boats. Christina's a naturalist, the chef, and the mate. She also captains the boat when it's needed. Matt, his first year was the year that I went because in Alaska they changed the rules and you have to have somebody on guard 24/7. So he takes over at like 10 o'clock at night and stays up all night, and then we don't see him again until like 4 in the afternoon. But young kid, he did outdoor recreation major in college, I think. And then some of you guys might recognize Sarah. This is how I met these guys. She runs their reservation line. She handles swag purchases that you do online, office duties, and she is the cat sitter for Jeffrey and Christina's cats when they are in Alaska. So she moves into their house when they're in Alaska, and then she lives in Albuquerque in the season when they're home. So this is where we went. We started in Ketchikan, which is right there. Misty Fjords National Monument. They got a special permit. It's the first time they ever had a permit for that. And then we went up, all the way up through here to Juneau. It doesn't look very far, but we did it in 12 days. And the nice thing about their boat is because Christine is so well versed in mammals and birds and everything, you get off the boat in as many places as we can. They have a skiff that takes us ashore. And every day, Jeffrey's got a schedule. Like this is the first day, Ketchikan to Rudyard Bay to Misty Fjords. And Christine encourages journaling and drawing pictures, which I did do a few pictures. I did journal everything because I knew I would never remember what the hell all these pictures were for. And I did draw a few things, but they're not anywhere near as good as she does. So she is a chef extraordinaire, and I have to give credit to Deborah Westwood. She was on the trip with me. She did that little collage on the left, showing some of Christina's food, some of the menus, things that we had. I mean, we started off every day as early as you're up. She had fresh coffee going and some kind of fresh baked good, followed by, she always had granola fruit and some kind of protein. If you look at some of these, we had kielbasa, scrambled eggs, we had grits Gruyere, we had all kinds of nifty things. Lunch was usually soup, salad, and fresh baked breads or rolls. And dinner was always something incredible. We did a lot of fish. These are actually haddock cheeks. And as you can see, we drank a lot of wine. But she always had fresh baked bread too. And the amazing part for me is that she creates all these scrumptious meals using a wood burning stove and oven. And they stock load those compressed logs to be able to feed the stove. But these pictures should give you an idea of the atmosphere, comfort, and camaraderie on a small boat. It's so much different from being on a cruise ship. So this is the salon for happy hour, and every day for happy hour, she'd have a couple of crafts of wine, nuts, cheese and crackers, just whatever she would. And then that's us having dinner one night. I don't even know who took that picture. So off we go, and I'm going to keep these short because these are just a lot of scenery pictures. Ketchikan is actually on Reveligado Island, and it is a huge island, and Ketchikan just takes up one portion of it. And we kind of motored around it for like 2 days, going to different places. This is New Eddystone Rock. It's an example of isostatic rebound. So instead of it sinking, the sea pushed up this rock, and it grows. There's all kinds of them. And I just thought it was very interesting. And the one thing I will say as we go through these pictures, remember, Alaska is part of a rainforest, and so it's not always sunny, although we did get some nice days. This is a beach walk in Punchbowl Cove at low tide. You can see Jeffrey took us out in the skiff and dropped us off, and everybody has rubber boots, and that's part of when you sign up, they want to know what size you wear. So everybody has their own. And we just got to explore the tidal pools, all kinds of cool stuff. And like I said, I wish I could include more pictures, but I would have to keep you here till midnight. This is blurry, but this is like, I don't know, 2,000 yards away from the boat. This cinnamon bear was wandering the beach one morning while we were eating breakfast. This is Myers Chuck. We stopped here, I don't know, maybe like day 4. And if you look close, this is too funny. This says highway, and that is it. You can only access this little village by boat, and yet they have a little post office, and Jeffrey and Christine have friends that live in that house right there at the end. And we went and visited them and kind of wandered around, took a lot of pictures there. So this is going through Wrangell Narrows, and it doesn't look narrow, but it really is because there's a lot of submerged rock, and so there's only certain places where you can get through. And then this is Petersburg. We actually were scheduled to do a stop in Petersburg, but what we ended up doing is we ended up dropping anchor, not really dropping anchor, but we actually ended up renting a spot and going in and exploring Petersburg and staying there overnight. And then we had time the next morning, so Christine and I and one other passenger did the Petersburg Nature Boardwalk Trail. And these are just examples of what was out there. Oh, and this is my whale. Okay, sea lions, they're everywhere. Everywhere where they can climb out. And if you look at the one that's in the water next to it, they knock each other off because there's not enough room. So they they grab the other one's fins and they yank them down, and then they swim around a little bit more and fight each other for them. The interesting thing about the whale is normally whales will spout and then flap their tail twice and then dive. That one just flapped his tail like 4 times and disappeared. So, but it was the best video that I had. This is Frederick Sound, and it's a sea lion haul out. It's what they call it. Can you hear them? Sound like a bunch of pigs. And that chugging you hear is the David B. So the thing about this is you're not allowed to get within 200 feet. So it's very hard to get pictures of them because the rules about getting them close. Oh, you know what? I never turned this on. That's why it's not working. So another book by Sue Henry, if you've never read Sue Henry, is Murder at Five Fingers Lighthouse. And I was intrigued because we were going to go close. So Jeffrey took me close enough to take a picture. I actually took 20 pictures, but that was the best shot I had. Sue Henry lives in Alaska, writes a ton of books about Alaska, and they're always about the same main characters. But so I had to get a picture of Five Fingers Lighthouse. So a lot of our trip involves skiff rides. So the one on the left, it actually wasn't a bad day, but it was cold. You can tell we're all bundled up. The two on the right, it was sideways drizzle. Not only do we have to have rain gear on, but we have to have life jackets on top of it. But that day we went out and Jeffrey brought snacks and we had hot tea with bourbon. Now, I didn't have any bourbon, but everybody else did. So our next stop was a place called Brothers Island. And it's one of the few places that is not inhabited by bears. So you don't have to go out there in a group. You can explore. Jeffrey took us out in the skiff, dropped us off, and we were able to just run around. And to me, this is like, I felt like I was in Lord of the Rings. And everything looked like this. I mean, I probably took a ton of pictures of this too. But I also took in the tidal pools, lots of little things I found just growing. I have a video of these things that are just like blowing bubbles up out of the water, but I didn't think it would show good on the screen. And I did, when I got done exploring, I sat on a big rock pile in the harbor and watched like a half a dozen whales. And it was too rainy to get pictures. So from Stevens Passage to Pleasant Bay, which is on the east side of Admiralty Island in the Kootznoowoo Wilderness, which means Fortress of the Bear. Pat Creek is jointly run by the U.S. Forest Service and the National Park Service. And these two individuals, one is from the Forest Service and she's from the Park Service. And Christine's been out there many times, and so she knows them. And so we don't have to get the big same safety lecture that everybody else got, but she gave it to us on the boat. So you're able to go to certain places to observe the grizzlies. You can sit on this stretch of gravel that you see. You can see the mud flats out here, but you can't go out there. And then there's another place that you'll see in another picture where there's 4 like big logs, and they have a big logged off square, and you have to sit inside that square. You can swivel around, and the bears are close, but they don't seem to be bothered by us. But like I said, it's pretty well policed. Here's one of the guys I had him put his hand down by a paw print. And there's a female, and I probably have 30 shots of her, but it was raining pretty bad, and so none of them are really great shots. But she did not seem fazed by us at all. She was in and out of the woods and just kind of watching us. And then this is just this is what I could see from where we had to sit. All right, so now we're going to get into waterfalls. And I will say Alaska has a ton of waterfalls. I don't know any of the names because you probably see 15 to 20 in one day. And especially because it's spring, they're all running pretty high. And that center picture to me reminded me of Raku, that art where they do some kind of fire on metal. But it fascinated me, and that's just colors from the water. And you can tell it's raining by looking at the water. So there's more waterfalls and more waterfalls. This one.
Did Alaska make you feel small?
No, but you're just kind of in awe of nature. But look how tall that is. And I actually had to shoot that twice because right at the end, the first time, one of the other pastors came up and said, "Oh, are you shooting a video? That's so cool." And I'm like, "Well, thank you. Now I have to shoot it again." So we go from waterfalls to icebergs, and we were all fascinated by this. We decided it was a sea monster that froze because it looked pretty funny. So this is interesting. This is the front of the David B maneuvering around the icebergs. So icebergs, 1/3 is above the water, 2/3 are below. So you really have to watch where you're going. And so he was very attentive. And standing up on the bridge with him, you can see down and see how deep down some of these icebergs go. So this is Dawes Glacier. And you're going to see a cool video right at the end because I'm almost done. That's going to show it calving. And there it is from the. So the top deck, if it were nice enough, there's a barbecue up there. There's chairs. There's all kinds of stuff.
Are all those chairs tied on?
Yes. Yes. Because it gets too windy. So tradition last night, you have whiskey on iceberg ice. So what Matt did is Jeffrey collected the ice. Matt had to take it, wash it off, smash it up, and put it in glasses so that we could have the traditional last night whiskey. And the only thing that we got told was do not try to bite the ice because it will break your teeth before you break it. That's how strong that ice is. So this was just the trip I was on. There were only 5 passengers. The couple on the right live, I think, in like Delaware. This guy lives in Seattle. She lives in Seattle. And Matt back there, he was the deckhand. And then Jeffrey gets out John Muir books and reads passages to motivate everybody while they drink. And then on the last morning, and I don't know how early she has to get up to do this, she makes fresh baked croissants with dark chocolate filling. And then this is us going into Juneau Harbor. And I will say that while the boat on the right was docked, the boat on the left was not, and it was trying to move in. And Jeffrey's like, we're just going to hang back and wait and see what he does. Because we had to go between them to this far dock over here. Because this is where the small boats dock. So we kind of hung out for a little bit while and then he finally went in there and maneuvered. So, and then here's our docking. So this gives you a perspective on how small this boat is compared to a cruise ship. And then that's just us tying up to the dock. And then this, let me turn this on.
Is that a typical process or is it accelerated?
So that was 13 individual video shots tied together. And I can't remember how I did it. Pete actually took the pictures, and then Deborah and I figured out how to make that little video. And then my niece on yesterday helped me figure out how to get it from my phone to there. And I don't have a clue how she did it, but it was interesting to be able to learn so many new things about what I could do with my phone. So that was cool. And that's it. Any questions? Yes.
You went last May,
Yes.
and how long were you gone for?
17 days total.
Okay, it sounded like it was 2 parts. You did like the cruise, then the rest of it.
Well, it was actually 3 parts. I did Anchorage, then I did Denali, and then I flew to Ketchikan and did the 12-day cruise.
Okay, right at the very beginning, you mentioned something about a sanctuary, wildlife sanctuary.
It is the Alaskan Wildlife Conservation Center.
Where was that at?
It's right outside of Whittier.
Whittier?
Yeah, it's on the Turnagain Arm. But I had never heard of it, but I have friends up north that went, and they had already planned to go there.
Well, your very first picture was of a bear, and you said that the mother had been killed. Do you happen to know how the mother was killed?
No, I do not.
Okay.
I think the mother was killed in a car accident in a nearby city. And just because this is one of the few conservation centers in the area, a lot of animals end up there from far away. I mean, the 2 wolves came there from Montana. Yes.
What was the name of the boat again?
The David B.
David B.
Yes. If you want to check it out, it's northwestnavigations.com.
There's some significance to that name?
The David B? No, not that I'm aware of. I think that's what the name was. Anything else?
You could just go for 2 weeks total. Would it be the cruise part? Or what you did in the beginning?
If I had 2 weeks, well, I was only there 17 days. I would probably, since I already did the Anchorage part, I would probably spend 4 or 5 days in Denali just day hiking, and then maybe do another cruise. Well, actually, one of the cruises that they have that I'm thinking about doing in a couple of years is the San Juan Islands, which is a lot closer. It's just out of Seattle, and it's only 5 days.
Who runs that sanctuary that you mentioned? Was it like Alaskan Game and Fish or Wildlife?
You know what? I am not really sure, but if you give me a second, I can tell you.